Hello, I just had some things I wanted to share. And continuing on in this vein of shamanism and addressing the darkness and all this kind of stuff. And I keep saying that phrase, all this kind of stuff. I don't know where I got that. I wanted to read something first. This is from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I will, I guess. And I just thought this was pertinent for what we've been talking about lately. Darkness and light are both of one nature, different only in seeming, for each arose from the source of all. Darkness is disorder, light is order. Darkness transmuted is light of the light, with a capital L. This, my children, your purpose in being, transmutation of darkness to light. So I thought that summed up a lot of the things that everybody's been touching on lately, and there's the darkness out there, and there are dark currents and things like that. The other point being, the point of that being that it is our job to transmute that darkness into light, not necessarily to only focus on the light, and certainly not to push the darkness to one side, because then the darkness just gets darker. And I think I said something in one of my videos that I was kind of questioning on the validity of it, that as the light gets brighter, the darkness gets darker. That's not necessarily true, I don't think. And this paragraph kind of pushed it into perspective for me, that darkness transmuted is light of light. So that linguistically makes, I guess, sense, but it's kind of esoteric. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, and I'm going to quote something, and it's going to be kind of long, so sorry, but it's all interesting. Let's see, I wrote down something in my journal. This is my sort of synchronistic thought process that's been going on with shamanic healing, working with darkness, spiders, the Anunnaki, and other vampires, lizards, and different things that have been popping up in my recent trains of thought and in other people's videos and all kinds of stuff. And I watched a video by Bernard Pullman called Medusa, and it was saying something completely different, but I'm just thinking of Medusa, and then I was like, I'm going to connect to Medusa just to see what she feels like at this point in my life, because I have connected to her before, and scanned her consciousness, and I thought, oh, I need to make that video about Kali. For some reason, Kali just popped into my head. It was like a similar type of energy connecting to Medusa. I'm like, I need to make that video on Kali. I said I was going to do that. And then so I got a book out, which you must read. Amazing, amazing, amazing. That kind of connects all this stuff together, and I looked at the first reference to Medusa in this book. And, of course, lo and behold, Kali is like 2 paragraphs later. And this chapter that it's in is called A Tangle of Serpents, and we're connecting that with the Anunnaki, and all of a sudden it starts mentioning Sumerian mythology, so Tiamat and all this stuff, and all these connections are coming together. And yeah, so then I wanted to read some of it, and I'll get to the point eventually, I promise. This is basically talking about draconian cults, and I'm not exactly sure where the Anunnaki are supposed to be from, but I think they're associated with Draco, and they're supposed to be reptiles and vampires in a way. Anyway, the draconian tradition is nothing new. As a mode of worship, it goes back a long way in history to a period when, as it is claimed, the polar star was within the constellation of Draco, the dragon. The independent scholar and poet Gerald Massey compared the earliest traces of Egyptian religion to those of ancient Africa, and thought that there was once a time when Egyptian religion and magic were quite distinct from the classical form. Massey assumed that there were at least 4 stages in the development of Egyptian religion. The earliest stage was characterized by stellar cults and by the common use of zoomorphic animal-shaped deities, which makes it likely that these religions were founded on the techniques of Paleolithic beast-form shamanism. The second stage was characterized by lunar cults and by a lunar mode of timekeeping. In the third stage, lunar and solar cults seem to have existed side by side, and in the fourth stage, the solar, the male-oriented cults of Osiris and Amun became dominant, leading to a persecution of the older cults, who were generally considered evil and unclean. I just wanted to say, okay, the Some of the new forms of religion retained few traces of the older cults, such as the popularity of beast-headed deities. As a rule, these bestial gods come from the earliest traditions. Specific bestial gods are intimately connected with draconian worship, such as dragons, serpents, pigs, spiders, jackals, dogs, vultures, and many others. These were worshipped for their peculiar magical qualities. And so on. It talks a lot about a lot of really interesting stuff in here, and you should buy this book. More specifically, I'm not exactly sure where it hits on it, but I just wanted to say that a lot of the things that we consider darker, you know, so something appearing, like for me personally, and it actually does, somebody commented on my video where I was talking about the Black Widow that, you know, decided to freak me out, and said it reminded them of the Loa, which is a voodoo deities, and it mentions those in here too. Oh, they're right here. It is interesting that when voodoo serviteurs, the people involved in the voodoo ritual, when they are mounted or obsessed by Danbala, who is the eldest of the sky gods and a serpent, show all sorts of characteristic serpent behavior. They hiss and sway, crawl on the ground, devour eggs, and occasionally they climb trees with great skill. And he can be seen as a key to the realm that antedates humanity as we know it, as a guardian of the stellar abyss from which we came and to which we may return if we will. And so what I wanted to say is those things that we consider dark, serpents, snakes, spiders, you know, and all these things that can be associated with certain forms of primitive, ritualistic shamanism and that freak the hell out of us for some reason. That's where we started. We started with all of that stuff. We started connecting to these, you know, lower chthonic realms and these base animals and bugs and things, you know, and that's where it came from in Paleolithic times. And so the gods evolve within the mind of humanity and within our own practices, and that which is supplanted by the newer gods becomes vilified and taboo. And then it ties on, or it hits on that fact over here. Let's see. Give me a moment. I think I missed it. Ah! Yeah. Yes, well. It's around here somewhere. I guess I'll have to read the section on the Sumerian stuff. At that age, before all ages, heaven above had no name, earth below had no word. The ancient forces Apsu, the abyss, and Mumu Tiamat, the chaos dragon, met in the void. They united and mixed their fluids. From this union, a host of chaos creatures were spawned, and after a while the first gods. Then followed other gods, and soon enough these new gods were wandering all over the place, loud and frivolous, demanding worship, and upsetting the ancient order of the world. It was not long before a mate and child of Tiamat, the demon king, or demon prince Kingu, demanded that this new plague ought to be controlled. The mother of chaos, who has formed everything, gave him weapons, spawned giant serpents. You don't need to hear that part. Okay, accompanied by 11 breeds of chaos creatures, Tiamat set out to fight the young gods. Marduk, victorious, divides Tiamat's body with his axe, and orders the world. The blood-slain serpent becomes the ocean. In Sumerian mythology, all of the world and all of the gods originated in the primal serpent, and the same could be said of human beings who were shaped out of the flesh and blood of Tiamat. This is the point that I was trying to get to. Greek mythology has Zeus, the lightning wielder, storm Mount Olympus, where he conquers the Titans, who are an elder race of gods. In Icelandic mythology, we find Thor, with his lightning hammer, happily fighting the elder giant races. Can you see a common structure in these legends? In each of these tales, a young god destroys or conquers a group of older gods who are usually described as primitive, chaotic, or evil by worshippers of the young god. Often enough, the new god's authority to rule is derived from these older deities. Think of the titan Prometheus, who carried fire from heaven. Zeus punished him for this deed by chaining him to Mount Caucasus. Every day Zeus sends out his eagle totem to eat Prometheus' liver, i.e. the ruling god feeds on the older deity. Tiamat and Marduk parallel this in the Greek legends of Medusa and Perseus. And okay, I wanted to get to Medusa, so Medusa appears as a horrid creature in most legends, hair full of serpents, eyes that open like tunnels into the void. That's important. Her face enchants with its beauty, her glance stops time and petrifies. Many old deities become devils when new cults were violently introduced. That Medusa once had a cult can be assumed from the temple she shared with Artemis in Corfu. A magnificent image of the deity can be seen, blah blah blah. Medusa heads grace a huge bronze vessel found in the grave of a Celtic noblewoman in the French village V, I guess it's pronounced V-I-X. This vessel was a Greek import. One legend claims Medusa was originally a priestess of Athena. At that time, Athena, goddess of war and wisdom, and Poseidon, god of the great deep, were at odds with each other. Poseidon courted her priestess Medusa. Blah 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 blah. We don't care. Suffice it to say that Perseus uses a mirror to see her. He cuts off her head before she can harm him. It is an interesting detail that once her head is severed, a fountain of blood erupts, and out of her throat her children are born. Chrysaor of the golden sickle, Pegasus, horse of inspiration. Then the goddess Athena came to collect the leftovers. She attached the Gorgon's head to her shield to be more terrifying and gathered the blood in 2 vessels. The blood from the left side of Medusa could restore the dead to life and heal all diseases. The blood from the right side had the opposite effect and destroyed instantly. All of these symbols hint at an ancient and draconian origin of the Medusa cult. I suspect, the author, that Medusa is the older deity, and that Athena came to collect the bits and pieces of the slain serpent goddess to bolster her own authority and prestige. In practice, I have found Medusa Satali, I don't know what that means, a goddess of great relevance to New Aeon magic. Her eyes petrify and stop time. In that void-minded instant, awareness can travel into her eyes, and through this head of coiling serpents into realms beyond reasonable comprehension. In Thelemic terms, Medusa seems to function as Mat, as Babylon functions for Nuit. She is a gate, a doorway to primal forces of consciousness, to strange aeons and timeless mysteries. Her mask reflects the mask of the seer, who is transformed in a coiling spiral dance of evolution. She doesn't sound too bad all of a sudden, does it, now when you're thinking about using them for interesting purposes. And we'll skip over now to Kali. Think of the famous Indian goddess Kali, whose name means black, but also may be related to Kala, time. She is usually shown dancing enthusiastically on copulating couples or corpses. Kali, like her Nordic counterpart Hel, is said to be of awful appearance. Her color is the black of the void. Coiling serpents adorn her arms, legs, and throat. They wind about her neck. They wind about her head and incite her to lust and madness. Her home is the cremation ground, in desolate places deep in the forest where her rites are celebrated with great secrecy and where she dances and laughs like a fiend, exhibiting blood-red eyes and terrifying fangs. It is typical for the goddess to adorn herself with a garland of corpses, to dance on skulls, and to bathe in rivers of wine and blood, to name just a few symbols which veil the essence of the deity behind a mask of terror. Hindu mythology claims that, she was born during a battle between the gods and a race of elder demons. What? Sounds familiar. On the battlefield, the face of the goddess Durga became black with rage, and out of her emerged Kali as a terrifying hag who laughs with glee as she dismembers demons. In one episode, she set out to fight the demon Raktabija, who had the power that his force increased and that he could duplicate himself whenever his blood fell to the ground. The gods, with their ordinary weapons, were helpless against Raktabija, who doubled and tripled each time he was wounded. Kali, however, found the solution. After wounding him badly, she took hold of the wound and sucked the demon dry. Then she gobbled up all the replicas, eating them in one bite until she stood all alone on the battlefield. This was the end of the demon. It was also the beginning of Kali's career as a major deity. Brimming full with the blood of the Ancient One, she became raving mad and would have destroyed the universe had the gods not made a drum out of the demon's corpse and incited her to dance. Just lovely, isn't it? Okay. Yes. Moving on. Oh, they go into like Anglo-Saxon stuff again, and that's always lovely, but I wanted to get to one particular point. If I can find that. I should have like marked these freaking paragraphs. I know I'm stupid. Crap. I thought it was over here. I'm gonna have to learn how to edit videos one of these days. Yeah. Ah, okay. Okay. This is a good one. It's a poem about Kali. Her ruby-studded brow is calm. Her eyes shine like some sleepy flood. Her breast is oliban and balm. Her tongue lolls out a dripping blood. She swings my body to and fro. She breaks me on the wheel of woe. To her eternal rapture seems mere nature underneath the crown of dusky emeralds there streams a river of bliss to sluice me down, with blood and tears to drown my thought and bring my being into naught. Thus wrote Kali's devotee Mahatma Paramahansa Shivaji, Aleister Crowley, who was among the first Western occultists to comprehend, this is the important part, that the violent and abhorred mask of Kali, or any of these types of deities like Medusa, etc., veils a secret blessing, the joy of ego death and self-realization. That's pretty much all I wanted to say, other than the stuff that we consider dark comes from the earliest forms of spirituality and religion, because that's what impressed us the most, I suppose. Little spider that can kill you is pretty important when you're a caveman, and continues on and dies in one form or another, and then becomes taboo, and then we replace it with something else, and then we replace that with something else, and it's fantastic. But to work with that kind of stuff, because it's still deeply embedded within our psyches, we need to address them and we need to work with them, and that good things can come. There was another paragraph in there. I'm not sure if I can find it because I just closed the book, but let's see. Very similar accounts. Medusa. Ah, yes. Medusa had a lot of bad no, don't need to read that. It comes as no surprise that such deities, draconian deities, the ones that scare us, let's just say, who have been despised for ages, respond very eagerly when they are invoked with honest sympathy. If you love them, they may well come to love you, and, mind you, being loved by a draconian deity can have a drastic, if not purgative, effect on what you consider your personality. I recall, and this is of course the author speaking again, I recall quite a few intense crisis scenes that happened after I found contact with Medusa, who, like many ancient deities, has a peculiar sense of humor when it comes to transformation and the refinement of her priesthood. Sometimes it is useful to assume an evolutionary point of view and to remember that momentary unpleasantness can be quite healthy for certain long-term developments. Also, there is the question of humor. In crisis scenes, there is a definite relation between how seriously you take yourself and how much it hurts. To produce a really painful crisis, certain mental attitudes are required, which are all tied up with ego. To make it hurt, you have to take yourself very seriously. You have to believe that your work is really important, and you'll require a dose of fear that you could fail at the job. To make it perfectly awful, top this with a sense of urgency and pretend that you need to do everything, or that you need everything changed right now. This recipe makes very painful and messy crisis scenes. Now, the funny thing is that the pain isn't really required. A magical crisis, i.e. one that transforms you intensely, doesn't have to be painful at all. If a crisis hurts much, this doesn't guarantee that you're really transforming. It simply indicates that you are stuck in some way and not transforming as elegantly as you could. An ego that offers little resistance to change is not inclined to feel hurt. An ego that embraces change and laughs about itself may find so many exciting things happen that it won't even notice what others perceive as pain. Remember, between the true self and the ego lies the abyss, the creator of names and the greatest jester in the multiverse. Yeah. So I know I'm just reading from a book basically, but I think it kind of sums up everything that I wanted to say. I hope that wasn't like 6 hours long. Okay then. It wasn't.